Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, I'm going to set the context of the retrospective and pinpoint a few ideas why they're essential and place them in the context of your annual OKR calendar. Then I'm going to share some ideas based on my experience of how to prepare your team for the retrospective so you can make best use of the time when you're together. We'll look at what information is helpful for teams in running the retrospective, and I'll be showing you which information it's helpful to have when you're running that retrospective using an OKR solution called Tability. I'll give you an option for an OKR agenda that I've used successfully with teams. And finally, I'll wrap the session up with thinking about, well, what do we consider if we don't actually meet our OKRs over the quarter? So let me give you some context around your annual OKR calendar. Now, I'm going to assume you will be having weekly or bi-weekly check-ins, as these are vital for keeping the team informed about your OKR progress through the quarter. And I'll be referencing these as we go through our session today. If you missed my webinar on how to run OKR check-ins, go to my website or the YouTube channel and you can watch it there. So the OKR check-ins throughout the quarter are for teams to share the actions they've taken. They're to update the team on the progress or the challenges that they've encountered. Also, it gives them the opportunity to reflect on what's happened since the last check-in and use that information to make decisions going forward until the next check-in. Now, your OKR planning and the OKR retrospective, if you like, bookend each quarter. And so what that means today is we're going to be shining a light at what happens at the end of the quarter, so that can then inform what happens at the start of the next quarter. So you might want to put a note in your diary now. We'll be following up with our next webinar on the 20th of September with some tips about how to create well-formed OKRs. And I'll give you a bit more information about that at the end of the session today. So let's take a look at how to plan for and run the best OKR retrospective possible and help ensure it's psychologically safe, where the whole team can reflect on the progress and successes of the quarter and equally honestly admit where they didn't succeed and discuss why and what they would do differently next time. Because it's these open and honest discussions which will be crucial to inform the planning for Q4. So let's start off by thinking about what we want to achieve when we're running an OKR retrospective. Well, it gives the team a real opportunity to reflect and celebrate the progress that's made during the quarter, and that's important. And also to recognize the successes of individuals and the teams. And you've got that real time together to talk about what people did as a team and as individuals that contributed to their success. It's also important to discuss the challenges that the team encountered during the quarter. And this is one reason why we really need to have that level of psychological safety in the team. So for everyone to be honest and feel able to openly talk about the challenges, and for them not to be fearful that there would be repercussions of that openness and honesty. Now, let's remember this retrospective is not an isolated team meeting that should contain surprises. Teams should be having weekly or bi-weekly OKR check-ins to share their progress and challenges. Retrospectives are part of the bigger picture in allowing teams to reflect over the quarter and also to reflect back over previous quarters so they carry that learning forward. And in this case, it'll be carrying it forward into Q4. Now, I'm a great believer in maximizing the time of the team when they're together. And that means having some really effective pre-work. So firstly, I would recommend to get all of the retrospectives in the diary at the start of the year. Or if you're not able to do that, as a minimum, get the retrospective in at the start of each quarter, because this shows that you're taking them seriously, that they have a level of importance. They're not just ad hoc meetings. and that they'll be added in or taken out of the diary, whenever. Because I've also heard, we didn't have time to run a retro last quarter. And that should never be the case, because they should always be planned in. We want to frame the retrospective as something that everyone has something to learn from, because it's about giving feedback. It's also about asking for feedback, and therefore it's about receiving feedback. And these factors will contribute to building or reinforcing that level of psychological safety within the team. Now, in the pre-work, and I'm going to talk much more about that, some individuals will really benefit from personal reflection, so that time on their own. And so I would suggest putting some questions into something like a virtual whiteboard, like Miro or Mural, or if you've got the capability to do that in your OKR solution, so that team members can reflect prior to coming together. Now, psychological safety isn't a given in a team. It has to be built. So this idea of allowing team members to reflect and think on their own will ensure that everyone gets to have a say. Now, it's also important for the leader of the team to really be asking for feedback on how they have been, okay? So to demonstrate some vulnerability, because that is a key factor in helping to reinforce that psychological safety. And within that, encouraging everyone to be specific about what those contributions have been to the team. And all of this will just kind of form layers to reinforce the psychological safety within the team. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to continue to give you a bit more detail about the pre-work, and also to suggest some questions to prompt that thinking. So we're going to split this into two parts. And firstly, let's look at what we would ask everyone in the team. So holistically, it's important reflection takes place for people, because we want learning to take place. So the reflection part is really important. And the idea of the pre-work is it will help make the most of the time when the whole team are together, and it will facilitate that learning. So asking people to reflect and capture their ideas in their own time can be very helpful, particularly if you've got some team members who maybe are less vocal when you're all together. And that's why I would suggest using something like a virtual whiteboard, or if your OKR software is able to do that, then everyone can contribute. And so here's just something that I created really easily in Miro. And we want everyone to think about the successes and challenges holistically. So yes, in relation to the OKRs, but also what has this meant for the team over the quarter? Was there anything specifically that happened during the quarter? Did a new team member join? Did somebody leave? Was there some sickness in the team? Did some of the company priorities change? Maybe there was something that happened outside of the organization that meant priorities shifted internally. These collective thoughts and ideas will then form the basis for the retrospective discussions. And that's the really key part, to really help individuals get their creative juices flowing, and enable them, when they come together, they've got the ideas and they've already had that thinking started for them. Now, we've looked at what this means for everyone in a general basis. What we now need to kind of drill down to and think about, well, the objective and the key result owners, how best can we get them to reflect on what their progress has been during the past quarter? Now, just quickly talking about ownership, we want the objective owners, and these are people who have been coordinating the key results, because remember, the owner of the objective and the owner of the key results may and are likely to be different. So the objective owner is the person that has been coordinating all of the key results, and we need them to reflect on the overall progress and achievement of the objective, and what challenges they may be encountered that I hadn't foreseen, and what they might do differently next time. Now, for the key result owner is someone who is coordinating the activities, so the initiatives that are sitting underneath their key results. And what we want them to think about is to reflect on the progress. We need them to reflect on the metric. So was it the right metric? Did we pick the right measure? If they missed the metric, why did they miss it? Again, what would they do differently? So just prompting that thinking in advance. Now, I'll say it again, nothing in a retrospective should be a surprise because you're having those weekly or bi-weekly check-ins. This is a place to share learnings, okay? The retrospective is a place where you pull together, if you like, the cumulative learning over the quarter. So this means you're going to utilize the check-in history, the comments, the progress of the initiatives, and looking at how the metrics have shifted over the quarter. Now, if you're using something like Excel or PowerPoint to capture your OKRs, it's important that within that process, what you have is the ability for people to look back at the history. If you're using software, it's about ensuring everyone knows how to update it and how to access it and see all of that information. So let's take a look at what is helpful from your weekly or bi-weekly check-ins. So here I've given you a screenshot of Tability. And for full disclosure, I am a Tability partner. So I'm really happy to talk to you if you want to contact me about Tability, or of course, contact and reach out to Tability themselves directly. Now, what we're looking at here is the activity for the key result. In surveys, 90% of employees say they feel safe to express their ideas without fear. So the information that you're seeing on the screen now is available at any time throughout the quarter. So this screenshot I've taken here is from last week. Now, remember the reason I'm showing you this. It provides all of the vital information you need to run a really successful and psychologically safe OKR retrospective. This information is visible for everyone, and for the retrospective pre-work, this information is really key for the objective owner, the key result owner, and the people that have contributed to those, so the people that have been working on the initiatives. So what is it that this information shows? What do we need to kind of capture from this? Well, it's important to know clearly what the key result is, who owns it, and who contributes to it. You also want to know the history of the activity throughout the quarter. So what initiatives were there? Were they achieved? When were they achieved? What's their current status? What happened at each check-in? Look at the comments from the key result owners and or the initiative owners and the contributors. What happened to the metric over the quarter? What was the confidence level in terms of achieving this throughout the quarter? So this history is invaluable when reviewing the OKRs. And it's just one reason why your weekly or bi-weekly check-ins are so important, and that these check-ins aren't just a nod to the process of doing OKRs. The OKR check-ins really need to be a place to update the team on the progress, celebrate success, express concerns, raise any challenges that you're experiencing, and ask for help. Because all of this will be really useful for the key result owner when they're discussing their key results during the retrospective. It will be really helpful for the objective owner to have a collective picture. And of course, it's really helpful for the person who's leading the team. For this particular key result that you see on the screen, it was fully achieved. Okay, so it reached the right metric. The confidence all the way through remained green, so it was on track all of the way through. So when this particular key result would be reviewed in the retrospective, it will be very brief, okay, because it was achieved. We celebrate this and we move on. Now, what I want to do now is just quickly share with you where that information comes from in Tability. Okay, so I've got a very short clip here, which is just going to give you a little bit of, if you like, some guidance around where I've actually got this information from. So the organization here is called Health Innovate. And when I log in, what you can see here is I'm taken to my focus. And this means the stuff that I own or I'm contributing to. And I see an overview of my OKR progress, the confidence, a breakdown of the key result and the initiative progress. And remember, I see this every time I log in. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to my plans. And my plans are where groups of OKRs live. And you can also see here, like in my focus, relative content to where I am in the quarter. So how many days left there are, the progress and a confidence score, etc. I've got the objective, I've got the key results, and underneath each key result, what I have is the initiatives and I have the status. So where are we at this point in time? So when I'm running the retrospective, wherever I am, I've got that information, which is really crucial for me. So if I think about it as an objective owner, as a key result owner, as the leader of the team, this information is incredible for me. It also means that everyone in the team who's contributing to the success of the OKRs knows what's happening, totally transparent. Now, as we move down and have a look, what you'll see is we've got a trends section here. So this gives me a real idea about what was happening in terms of the key result, in terms of my confidence with the key result, in terms of whether the objectives that contribute, the key results that contribute to the objective, whether they were on track as we go through the quarter. So a massive amount of information for everyone in the team. So it's brilliant when we come together, both in those bi-weekly or weekly check-ins, and when we come together in the OKR retrospective at the end of the quarter, we've got the information and we know exactly what it is. So you can see why I really love this as a bit of software, because it just removes all of the barriers for people if they've got any challenges or concerns about using OKR software. And what it does is it gives super relevant information for people whenever they need it. Now, I said I would share with you one way to run an OKR retrospective. So here we've got a suggested agenda. And this will be using the pre-work questions that I've just shared with you. And the beauty of the pre-work means that you hit the ground running when the team are together. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share a link at the end of the webinar so you can download this agenda along with a range of other OKR resources from the website. So it's important to reinforce psychological safety within the team. And one way of doing that is to ask a team member in advance if they would like to run the session for the team. What I would also suggest when you're kind of planning this is that you break the retrospective down into two parts. And the first part would be where you discuss general reflections and learning. And then the second one would be where you focus on the specific OKRs. So in this first part, you've got the team member, ideally, running the session. And then you go through, you review, you celebrate those successes. And remember, all of this has kind of started from the pre-work. The objective and key result owners share their general thoughts and their learning, what's happened through the quarter. Team members then can offer their own ideas on what they've learned from the process to ensure even better success in the upcoming quarter. And another way to help build psychological safety is for the team lead to ask for feedback on their part during the quarter. I talked about this at the start of the session, this idea of modeling vulnerability. And if we want to reinforce this is about feedback and feedback is about learning, then the team lead really needs to role model that. So the second part of the retrospective is focusing on specific objectives and key results. Now, objective and key results owners share their specific thoughts on their own OKRs. And it's thinking about, were they the right objectives? Did the successful achievement of the key result mean the objective was met? And that's a really important question to think about, because As we look at measures and we look at the metrics, and we're going to talk about that more in our next session, if we've achieved all our key results, what that should mean is that we've fully achieved the objective. So if we haven't achieved the objective, then actually what that meant was maybe those key results, maybe those metrics weren't the right metrics to be measuring. So that's a really good question, again, for the team to be reflecting and thinking about. Something else to talk about is, did the key results contain the right amount of stretch? So did it push the team a little bit further, or were they pretty straightforward and quite easy for the team to achieve? We need to celebrate the successes and use the data, and that's why I showed you the information just now with Intability. We need to use that data to help people reflect on the learning, because, as I said, and I just said about the fourth time now, this information in a retrospective shouldn't be a surprise. Now, maybe OKRs weren't met, and let's think about that, what that means and what to do about it. So during the retrospective, what you should have been able to do is paint a full picture of what happened over the quarter. And if you didn't achieve the OKR, there may have been a range of reasons. You know, maybe business requirements changed and you had to pivot. Maybe there were some changes in the market. Maybe there were some changes, as I said earlier, in the team resource. Maybe when you look back and reflect, they weren't the right key results. They weren't the right measures. Let's think back to what we would have done at the end of Q2, at the start of Q3, end of Q2, start of Q3, when we were planning this. The metrics that were chosen were the most appropriate at the time. And if we didn't achieve them, and we understand why we didn't achieve them, that's what we're going to use to help us going into Q4. And this is what Amy Edmondson would refer to as intelligent failure. So Amy Edmondson is the world-renowned guru on psychological safety, and she has written this great book called The Right Kind of Wrong: How the best teams use failure to succeed. And if you have made a really sound judgment based on knowledge and based on the information that you have to hand of what that metric is, and you didn't achieve it, and you know why you didn't achieve it, that is intelligent failure. And that is important to kind of recognize and digest, because that will help you when you're moving on. If then we haven't met our objectives or our key results, we have some logistical decisions to make about the objective, if it's still a priority as we go into Q4. So we need to consider, if it's a priority, do we carry it over? Do we keep the same results, the same key results? Do we change the key results? If we keep the same key results, what we need to reflect on is, are we in a better position now to meet those key results if we didn't meet them in Q3? Do we know what's changed? Once the retrospective is complete, you will have your virtual whiteboard or your software solution filled with the team reflections. And this is gold dust as you carry this forward into your OKR planning for Q4. And that leads me very nicely on to our next session, which will be on September the 20th at 15:30 UTC +1, when we have our webinar on how to create well-formed OKRs ready for Q4. To be able to join that, you can join through LinkedIn, you can join through our website. I'm going to put the link in the chat in a moment. And as you leave the session today, you will see a link that will enable you to download the PDF with all of that information about the OKR retrospectives that I've shared with you today, the questions and a sample agenda. Plus, there'll be a range of other OKR resources on the website as well. So you'll have the opportunity to give some feedback, and that will be really helpful to read. Let me just put a link to that in the chat now. There we go. That is in the chat. So thank you so much for your time today. It has been an absolute pleasure spending 30 minutes or so with you. I will post the recording of this webinar on the website as well. So you'll be able to look at The first webinar, which was looking at OKR check-ins, this webinar, which kind of sets and reflects us how we look back on the quarter with OKR retrospectives. And then we've got the next webinar on the 20th of September, which will be looking at how to create well-formed OKRs. It's been my absolute pleasure talking with you today. Thank you very much. Goodbye.